Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fourth, maybe last, maybe not, installment of the Sniper Mind series of Hangouts. Today we're going to start actually with a little song. I hope everybody can join me here. The book was written by David Amerland, and yesterday was his birthday. So I don't have a cake with candles, so we'll do Washington Fires instead. And everybody, here we go. Happy birthday to you. Come on. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, David. Happy birthday to you. And many more. Okay, so clearly people need some training in singing, but that's not what we're here about.
Okay. There's no way I can blow out that fire.
Slightly belated, but happy birthday. I didn't have a cake with candles, so this is instead of that. So today we have the author of Sniper Mind, who just turned 28, by the way, in case you're wondering how old he is. I was wrong. I said he was 40. He's 28. And so, David, welcome. First, we'll say hello to you.
Thank you very much. And that was some fire. There's no way of blowing that out.
Absolutely. Great to have you here. Great to talk to you about this. And we have a very distinguished panel here of additional guests here. We've got, we'll go in the order. We've got Errol. Errol, hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Pleasure. And Errol, where are you from?
I'm in the United States. I'm originally from New York, but currently live down in Jersey. Down South Jersey, just outside of Philadelphia.
Excellent.
Atlantic City, yeah.
Well, welcome. Then next up, we have Gideon Rosenblatt. Hello, Gideon. How are you?
Hi. How's it going?
Good. Gideon is from a good area, from Seattle area here. I know that.
A good area, yes.
And then we have the ever-talented Gina Fidel. Hello, Gina. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
Good. And Gina is from California, right, Gina?
Originally New York, and living in Santa Barbara the last 21-ish years.
Okay, we're sticking to current stuff because if originally I have to talk about Russia, the last thing I want to do.
New Yorker after all, sorry.
Exactly. And then we have Michelle from France. Hello, Michelle.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Yes, hello. We have French people watching us, I think, this evening. So I am in the northeastern France, just next Germany, Luxembourg, Switzerland, Austria, and, well, in the heart of Europe. Voilà.
Anyway, welcome. And in case you're wondering who's going to be dubbing this hangout in French, it's going to be Michelle. Then we have from former Soviet bloc country, we have Nina. Hi, Nina. How are you?
Hi. I'm from Bulgaria, Sofia, and we've said goodbye to the Soviets 25 years ago. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Anyway, great to see you. Great to see you. Thanks. And then we have Tim Longwell from... Hi, Tim.
Hi, Tim Longwell. I'm from southeastern Oklahoma.
From Oklahoma. Welcome, Tim. And last but not least, we have Zara Altair from the Smoky, Oregon.
The Smoky, Oregon, we have orange sun and red moons, and it's very smoky, ash falling down onto the plants, everything.
It's going to get better. In case people are wondering, this is what it looks like right now in Washington and Oregon.
Thousands and thousands of acres.
Okay, so if you hear me coughing, it's one of the two things. Either I want whoever is talking to stop so somebody else can come in, or I'm actually choking on smoke. One of the two possibilities. Okay. With jokes part of the morning, we're done. Let's move to the Sniper Man. So David, for those who don't know, David Amerland is a world-famous author and analyst and speaker and just a great guy all around, great friend. And he wrote a bunch of books, and this is his 10th book called The Sniper Mind, which you can get on Amazon. Well, not totally. You can try to get it on Amazon, and you can pre-order it, which is something I definitely recommend you do, because right now, as you see on that screen, it shows it's still at 46% off. So you'll never get a deal that good in the future, but right now you can still pre-order it. The book is coming out on November 7th of this year, so it's coming pretty quick. So anyway, you can get it on Amazon. Just go to look for Sniper Mind, the Sniper Mind, David Amerland. It will come right up. It looks something like this. Okay, so I guess we'll start out by maybe we'll just go. I think we're gonna start with guests, and then we'll have David reply, and we'll go from there. And then once in a while, I'll chime in with some stuff from the last part of the book. And we'll start out with Gideon today. Gideon, you have the floor. I can't hear you. You're muted, Gideon.
Okay, that might be a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So remind me again, the focus of these initial sessions is just kind of summarizing the key things that we've pulled from the book. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the thing that I found interesting about this book, I got to go back to my notes, but the way that I described it is, this is a book about snipers. It's actually a book about business, which is actually a book about the greatness of the individual. It seems like it's kind of wrapped in these shells, and the sniper stuff is the stuff that kind of keeps you turning the pages, because it's just the natural human desire to understand what happens to these guys, these kind of supernatural agents. But all the way through, there's these interesting things, and I just kind of highlighted a couple of points. One is on page 82. There's this whole section about the Romans called this gravitas, talking about this idea of cultivating this quality of gravitas in people's lives. And one of the things that I pulled from this book is that there's a quote in here someplace that says something like, snipers are not born, they're made. And I kind of got the sense that what David was trying to do with this book was show that though these are very exceptional people, to be clear, they are cultivating these skills, and that the military has developed these techniques to be able to bring out these kind of superpowers in people. And that this goes far back in time, all the way back to the Romans, and probably before that even. So that was the thing that I found very encouraging, and it just so happens to come at a time right now in my life where I'm thinking a lot about concentration through my meditation practice, but also beyond that. Just I did a post a couple days ago about falling asleep while I'm reading. Not this book, of course, but other books, and the need to be able to concentrate the mind. The stakes aren't as high when you're reading a book as when you're defending your comrades in arms, but the point I think is very similar. So I'll just stop right there.
Excellent. Sounds definitely great from the standpoint of if you think about it, like you said, like the book says, that these people are not born this way, they're made this way. And this is what David makes that concept very visible in the book. And the idea is to express to everybody in business and in their own personal lives that you can basically adapt to just about anything, and then you can overcome it, which is the mantra of the snipers that David points in the book many times: adapt and overcome. And so any kind of situation can be dealt with if it's done with proper amount of training, proper amount of thought, and there's many elements involved. And one of the things we covered last week a little bit is what they call the Hell Week for Navy SEALs and Special Forces people, and the snipers as well. And very few people actually survive this, because the idea is to break them, actually have people collapse mentally and physically and not go through it. And only the best of the best are able to actually pull themselves through it. And then they get this additional training to get to the point they are. But the bottom line is, it's not talent. This is, I always talk about Gina and how amazingly talented she is with art. That's something you have to be born with. You can't learn how to do art like she does by simply spending time and learning. Okay? But these kind of things that David's talking about in the book, they're tough to do. But if you apply yourself in terms of both, if you're willing to change, the main thing I took from reading a lot of this stuff is that if you're willing to change, consciously willing to change, And if you're willing to take action, then you can achieve what is called as the superhuman capabilities, like the snipers do. And I'll, David, continue with that thought.
Okay, it's an interesting thought on both sides. And Gideon, thank you very much for pointing this out about exceptionalism and bringing up gravitas, which in the Romans was a form of presence, which was cultivated in their being. And essentially, I'll sort of quantify a couple of things here. We live in a world where we prize exceptionalism in every kind of form, whether it's sports or the battlefield or the world of business. And we come from a world, most of us, because of our age, where it was something you were born with. And that was something that was the accepted wisdom of the time. And here we are today with the tools we have in terms of analyzing how the brain works and how neuroscience is allowing us to understand the mechanics of it. And also we have a data-rich world, which allows us to go back and look at the environment and look at the influences and look at all these things which come together. And what we actually learn is that every time we encounter exceptionalism in an individual or a group or a nation or a country, it is the result of directed, intentional, cultivated effort. And if we apply that, any of us, at that level, we'll be able to basically achieve the exact same thing, that same sort of stage. And here's what it is. Essentially, and I'm going to bring together a couple of relatively disparate elements. We all know about the 10,000 hours rule, where it says that, you know, if you do 10,000 hours of anything, you're going to become really good at it. And the studies which have been carried out on that front show that exactly putting 10,000 hours of anything does not make you really good at it. It makes you sort of mediocre, a little bit above average. But this is not the same for every individual. So when you see some individuals who actually do better on a 10,000 hour rule than others, then you begin to analyze what the difference is. And the difference between individuals is their intent. Some people just go through thinking, okay, 10,000 hours, I'll just clock it up, and that's enough. And other people use each one of those 10,000 hours to analyze it, learn, find out who they are, discover how it impacts upon them, and how they can get better. The same 10,000 hours of tuition, but the results are fundamentally different. And the difference is with the individual. And every time we talk about any kind of form of exceptionalism, the difference is with the individual and their ability to focus on what they want and what they want to achieve. It's that intentionality. You know, you really want this. You really are present. This is where gravitas comes in, where essentially you're focused on this because you're cultivating it actively as opposed to just consuming it or going through it passively. And that's the entire difference. And the entire book in 12 steps, essentially, shows you a little bit of how to achieve that kind of focus.
Great. Okay. Next, let's. One of the things I wanted to mention also, David, is that, but you agree that the change is the key thing here, is that for many people, I think, especially in business, biggest problem they have, or biggest obstacle they have in many endeavors is the fact that they're completely either totally refuse or some would refuse to adapt any kind of change. And so what's happening to me is this lack of willingness to adapt any change is basically keeps them at their level and doesn't allow them to step forward into a better place to be when it comes to how you do business. Do you agree with that?
I will say that yes and no. Yes, in that for any of us, you know, any of us faced with change, our natural reaction is to go into an avoidance mode because change is hard. We need to get out of our comfort zone. We need to learn new skills. We need to ascertain and assess new threats. All this takes effort, and we're hardwired to avoid effort. So their natural mode, their default mode, is to avoid change. Conceptually, we all know that change is good. So how do we overcome that? And I think Errol's experience, and Michelle's, and pretty much anybody who's worked in a corporate environment, in a good corporate environment, will attest to this. It's that essentially you create a team which accepts change and becomes a support network for each other, and suddenly the load of change for the individual is automatically lessened. And then change becomes more acceptable. And that's the trick, really. You know, this is, you know, none of us is strong enough to continue alone forever. We can't do it. We'll break. We can do short things, but long term, the individual just break. We haven't got enough energy. Put us in a group, we can do amazing things. And we're hardwired to connect in a group and normalize. And this is something which requires a little bit of effort because, again, it's something we resist.
Exactly. But in addition to change, I think the second key point is taking action. That's one of the things that, it seems like everything that the snipers do and everything that you do in business, there's a lot of people who talk about all kinds of stuff that they want to do this and they want to achieve that and everything else, and then nothing happens. And so I think that's the key part is wanting to change. If something doesn't work right is one essential element of it. Second element is actually taking action to make it happen. And I think snipers, like you described in your book, perfect examples of the training they go through. There is no such, for them, it's a mandatory thing. It's not like making changes and taking action is something that's optional. For them, it's a mandatory thing. And I think if people adopt this in the business, they would have similarly positive consequences. And then it comes to the whole adapt and overcome thing. But then, can you go a little bit more into detail about the SEALs? They have a saying, it doesn't matter if you don't mind. Can you go a little bit more describing?
I will, and I think this is great, but I'm also conscious of the time element, and if perhaps we can ask a few more questions from others who are pressed for time, and I will get back to this because this is important, and you're right. So I'm making a note of this to get back to it.
This is equivalent to a slap in the face, which I understand. So at this point, I will go ahead and turn it over to, let's go to Errol, because you were mentioning Errol. Let's go to Errol. Errol?
Well, thanks again. I could really go on and on. I could probably write a book of my own with the amount of notes I put in the margins as I read the book. But I'll just kind of go in the direction that you went, Oleg. As far as change and action, one of the things that really resonated for me with the book, I do leadership consulting, I do individuals, I do teams. And one of the things that I try to get across to people is the ability to change exists. And sometimes it's been a while that people just had to take your word for it. Trust me, do this enough. And what I loved about the book was the science that you brought into it, neuroplasticity. And what I tell clients now is that's good news and bad news. The good news is we can change. The bad news is we're out of excuses. Okay. And it's not easy. Okay. And to your point, Oleg, it's action. That's it. That's the only way change happens. The science will tell us that if you take action, if you do something and start recreating new pathways in your brain, then that will be you. That will be the new, better you. One of the things that stood out, I'll just take one of the many things in that, was when we talked about how snipers deal with fatigue. Well, snipers deal with fatigue by planning for it. They don't pretend that it doesn't exist. They don't pretend that they're superhuman. Sometimes I coach folks, I coach a set of union executives, and they go against this very big corporation and they have to battle. And finally I said, we're prepping for a meeting, and I said, when are we going to stop pretending that we don't know what they're going to do? When are we going to stop pretending that they're going to answer your emails? When are we going to stop pretending that they are going to respond to your request? Let's start planning for that. Okay. So the fatigue came, it really hit me, because what I try to tell people is you have to plan for everything. And that planning, that action of saying fatigue is real, I need to plan for it, put it in my plan, brief it, have a set of things I need to do when I get tired or when I know I'm going to get tired. And you only do that, that only becomes part of your being through action. So, again, I could go on. I probably am not the right person to have on this, because I could go on and on too. But, those are kind of my thoughts on change and action and process.
Love it. That's absolutely.
Errol, do you have any questions or anything else you want to say?
No, I would love to defer as well. Like I said, if you allow me too much rope, I will absolutely take this over. Even if you mute me, I'll be doing this the whole time. So let's let's let some other folks, because I'd love to hear what everybody else has to say.
All right. So now
quickly, before we go,
yep.
I was going to say, before we go to the next person, just very quickly, quantifying what Errol said, and Oleg brought it up a little bit earlier. It's essentially the ability to accept vulnerability. And that's really scary, because we have been conditioned for a long time in the 20th century not to accept that, because we feel that it makes us appear weak. And then you talk to people who are, to all intents and purposes, appear supernatural in what they can do, and they just go with the flow. They know they're going to get weak and tired, as Errol said, and they have already a contingency plan in place to deal with that, and that's their strength.
And that's exactly what I was trying to bring up earlier, is when I said that they have a saying that says, it doesn't matter if you don't mind. I think that's a big part of the whole dealing with the tiredness of everything else, is I think a lot of us in the regular life and in business life get totally distracted with all kinds of different things. That, I can't do this because, there's too much noise that Gina's air conditioner is making right now. Or there is some noise coming in. I don't know where it's coming, but there's some kind of blowing noise coming. And, I can't do that because of this or because of that. And everybody comes up with all kinds of excuses, like Errol was saying, that it's always excuses. It's always thank you, whoever did this. It's always something that indicates that, yes, we can do this only if this was true. Only if you give me another day, if you give me another month, if you give me only if I had red shoes today, whatever. Excuses are everywhere. And I think it makes a huge difference. So it doesn't matter if you don't mind. I think it's a brilliant statement.
Oleg, could I just also, do you mind if I jump in real quick to piggyback on something that I think is really important? Because a lot of things that I get sometimes are, well, Errol, we're not Navy SEALs, and we don't ever have to do that. We don't have to worry about getting fatigued. And my answer is, that's not true. That is not true. And it goes as simple as, are you scheduling a very, very important meeting at the end of the day? Okay, because if you are, that's a bad move, because you will naturally be depleted at the end of the day. If this is such an important meeting, for example, you need to put it at a time when you're fresh. And that's an example I give to everybody. We all have our levels of fatigue that we need to deal with. So it's just as true in the business world. When are you planning those important events? Do you think that you're going to get as much done at the end of the day as you planned in the beginning of the day? You're not, because you're going to be tired. So we need to plan for that. So I don't mean to jump in again, but I warned you.
Not a problem, Errol. Not a problem. No, absolutely. Very useful. All right, now we go to the super talented Gina, and then David will talk about the it doesn't matter if you don't mind. Hi, Gina.
Hello. I've got so many things swirling around in my mind from everything that everybody has said. But first, Oleg, it really isn't about being born with talent. I will disagree with you, and I have been. It's really about discipline and perseverance. And I personally believe that anybody can become a good artist if it's what they believe in about themselves and what they're passionate about, or what their determination is. And it's really just building practices. And that's one of the things that I really love about the book. I'll confess to the moment when I first heard the title and I had to kind of adjust my thinking and open my heart and my mind to trusting this is David. And I'm not sure what that sounded.
That's an airplane on my end. Okay. 1 second.
I was muted when you complained about the air conditioning. Anyway, one of the things that I really love about the book, and that's been sort of of course, realization as I'm reading it, and that's that David is taking something that seems impossible, grandiose even, and unachievable, and he's breaking it down into all of these parts, and it kind of reestablishes my own confidence within my own life of the fact that it's the small practices that really matter. And we really are kind of a series of small practices, and the things that we focus on and put our attention to, they may not seem connected, but they all come together in a particular kind of package. And that's the way that I work, and it's the way that I work with our clients. And I have this understanding that anybody can do just about anything if they take it in small pieces and if they incorporate it into their daily routine. And I'm kind of rambling now, so I think I'll stop.
All right. I don't have any problems with Gina saying everything she did, but respectfully, I will disagree again, because Gina has never seen my art. That's why she says that anybody can learn. I respectfully disagree. No, I think there's a lot to say about art. If you look at art, you know, no matter how much you practice to play the piano, you're not going to be a Mozart. It just, that's, to me, that's the difference in terms of having talent and doing practices. So Gina is extremely talented and very shy, modest, I should say, not shy, modest. And if you've seen her art, you know what I'm talking about. With that said, we're going to move on to Nina Trankova from Bulgaria. Hi, Nina.
Hi. First, thank you. This is a great experience. It's the first time I'm reading digitally your book. Thank you, David. That was a surprise because I never thought I could read a book on my computer because, you know, I'm from the last century education and everything is on paper. Secondly, it's like Alice in Wonderland. So I put on like counterpoint my most pink clothes and my earrings, because on every step I you remember Pinko the Rose Panther, trying to go deep and understand all the nuances that interest me in terms of focus. And I have what I read, I put publicly in a collection. And I'm very privileged to be with the writer and the participants in the book. That's an exception. I think it's changing the reading experience forever. Like it's the virtual reality and the real world together. It's I don't have many words to express. We talked with Gina about my wording. Anyway, I'm a foreigner, so I don't have a big capacity of telling many words. But I really feel all the book like a reality, and the focus, it's a discovery to me. Focus is like a dance for everyday life, and that's where I see my role like a woman is you have to be very focused, yes, but to be persistent means also everything connected with this high range of the shooting before and after, and the preparation and training. It needs, I see the focus like a dance. I've put a very nice, and thank you that David liked that poll, being present versus creating a gap between the person and the ego, because I'm also an inside graduate and we are learning there by experience how to observe, how to have lessons and learnings and knowledge all the time. But actually it's connected all the time. It's you cannot separate, and the poll is showing that being present is prevailing a lot. So if you're not prepared, you cannot do anything. And that's for now my discoveries. Please read the book. It's extraordinary knowledge. And thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Great to have you. I'm going to have to share the screen after what Nina said because it's important. There we go. And
can I just add something to what Nina said, because I think that is important.
While the screen is on, absolutely.
Okay, well, essentially, Nina said something really cool in terms of everything being like a dance. And in a dance, any individual moment, any individual movement cannot, although we can admire it in its own right, cannot stand alone. It leads to something else, which is perfectly logical, and it comes from something else, which is also perfectly logical. Everything is linked, and everything is the result of something else. So if we, and Gina earlier said that, you know, it's a small practices that matter, and Errol and Michelle who have come through a military background know about the small things in discipline, you know, keeping your bed tidy and keeping your uniform crisp and cleaning your gun. And you think these are ridiculous things, you know, we're fighting a war. But these are the things which actually matter at the moment that the bigger things come in, because you have the confidence of knowing what you do. You have the confidence in yourself. You understand your own ability and your own identity. There are no questions about that. And that's what allows you to do the next thing. So everything is actually linked. You can't take one individual moment and say, oh, that moment of greatness is possible. Well, the steps which made it possible are many and methodical, and they're granular, the little steps which actually led to something big. So essentially, and this is new for us in the 21st century, we are using neuroscience to understand how we can become exceptional through small things which lead to greater things. We learn how to basically understand who we are, and what we want to do, and what we want to achieve, and how we actually break it down into the steps, the practical steps necessary will get us there. And it's this kind of discipline of the mind which is really new to us. But the good news about this is that anybody can do it. And indeed, anybody can become exceptionally good at drums or drawing or painting by understanding that neuroplasticity of the brain, the connections which are made, and then perhaps replicating them through either training or environment or a combination of both, coupled with intent, coupled with this determination. So it is really possible to do that.
Okay. All right. We'll go with that. I still have a chance then to draw as good as Gina at some point. So let's get back to what I said earlier. Is this? I think in addition to small steps, for those people who don't know what small steps are, watch the movie What About Bob? It describes it really well. And so the deal with small steps is great. Part of the problem with the whole experience of learning and this and that is that even though you take small steps, at the same time there is too many things coming at you. You get bombarded all the time with emails and social media and work and kids and dogs and all kinds of different things. And so I think I want to drive David back to this deal about the Seals expression. It doesn't matter if you don't mind, because I think it's an important thing for people to learn, especially in business, to be able to kind of move forward and make progress by utilizing that approach. David?
Okay, I mean, this is okay, and thank you for coming back to this.
Yeah.
Now, essentially, it's a very well thought through expression, and it's not about not minding as in you don't care, minding in terms of prioritizing what you need to deal with. And this is really important. I mean, you gave a classic example of people living in the modern world where we have kids and bills and dogs to be walked and food to be bought and emails to be answered, and they all happen at the same time. And suddenly you say, okay, how do I deal with all this? And if you have to ask yourself, it's the first problem, because you have no real coping strategy and everything is coming at you at once. And then the second thing is you haven't really got any kind of prioritizing filter. We say, thing. You know, the dog needs to be walked now, because if not, we're going to have an accident in the living room, for instance. And then the email needs to be answered next, because it's going to lead to a job opportunity, and that brings food on the table. So these are the things which, this is the kind of thinking which we need to actually put in place, not just as things happen, but before they happen. Okay, I talked to about 100 snipers, serving and former snipers. And what struck me is that they were really good at basically thinking ahead and thinking the what-if scenarios. And this is something which they have had to learn. I mean, if you're in an active duty situation, you can't afford to say, well, you know, I'm going to take this shot and then coming fire, and I feel kind of exposed. Oh, I'm going to look for cover. Well, you can't do that. They already know where to go to. They know what will happen next. They know that if this happens, then that's their next move. And they have trained themselves to think about these things as they go along. So it's not a huge mental effort for them to do that, because it's become second nature. Now, you can argue that they have had to, because of where they have been, and that's a perfectly valid argument. But we all live in a modern world. We all know there are distractions. We all know that technology It's allowing things to happen more and more and more at the same time, not sequentially anymore. We know that there are no time zones, really. You know, you're working 24/7. We know that there are no sort of highly compartmentalized working hours or even jobs or even responsibility sectors. So we know all these things. And since we know all these things, I think it is kind of perhaps not very smart to have this strategy of hope, where we hope that things will work out okay. We hope things will not be as bad as they should be or they could be, because really things will be at some point, and we will in terms of dealing with them. So essentially what the SEALs do as a group, they prepare themselves for the worst by basically planning ahead and supporting each other and running scenarios and knowing that to fail in any kind of a situation like this is human, and then they need to understand why and how can they then become better, so that they learn from their failures. And these are, again, things which we don't embrace very easily. We don't embrace failure very well because we think it's criticism and judgment. We don't embrace vulnerability very well because we think we're failing. And these are very human traits. So we start off normally in the business world or in civilian life by denying the things which make us human. And then we completely fail to become anything better than that because we are constantly fighting our own nature. Our vulnerabilities, if we accept our failings, and we say, okay, this is going to happen, and I know that, you know, I can function with 4 hours sleep. I'm stuck. How do I get through that day? Do I need more coffee? Do I need a nap? Do I need to cut back on a couple of things which are not necessary to be done on that day? Or do I need to reschedule, as Errol said earlier, that really critical meeting? I can't have it on a day with 3.5 hours sleep because I'm sleepwalking. So, you know, these are the things which allow us to become better at what we are, and we get through that day successfully, and then the next day becomes even better because then we have 5 hours sleep perhaps, and we're flying high. So, you know, this is the kind of mentality, for lack of a better word. It's an awareness of the challenges you face, the strengths you have, and the weaknesses you bring to the table. Awareness is what allows you to become better than you are. And denying it, thinking, oh, I'm going to be all right, that's really bad. This is where things become really wrong. So that's what Navy SEALs actually have a culture of developing as a group, as a mentality. You know, the moment you're in there, they all support each other in that respect. They know they're going to become better and better and better. They know the path to excellence is littered with failures. And each failure becomes a learning process and a step that takes them to a higher place.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of you know, business thinkers and leaders and motivational speakers, that's all they say the same thing, that, you know, the failure, it can kill you if you look at it in an improper manner, or it can be a great motivator and great help in just getting you, basically, if you think about going from A to Z, you're simply, these are stepping stones to get to Z. You're still good getting to Z if you want to get to Z, but the failures are nothing more than your stepping stones to get there. So no question, it works for, you know, business just as well as it works for them. But I think the reason I really like this statement, you know, it doesn't matter if you don't mind, the idea being, like I said, because so many things do bombard you, you do need to prioritize, and you need to make it, like you were saying earlier, David, to make it as simple as you can. So just little steps and make it simple, and then you'll be able to slowly or quickly, depending on the situation, achieve whatever you're trying to achieve. But one of the ways to do that is to eliminate some of these distractions that are not that important, because if you think about it, we have, I mean, one of the things about children with autism, for example, is that they see a lot of things all the time and they can't filter through them. That's one of the reasons they have such a hard time dealing with the reality of life, is because everything that bombards them, they wind up taking it all in and trying to deal with it, which of course is impossible for any human being. We people who don't have the ASD are able to actually filter through that. And so this, if you don't, it doesn't matter if you don't mind, meaning that you need to prioritize your things and you need to move on with things that are important and concentrate on those and leave everything else aside. I mean, that's the way I'm reading it. So with that, we're going to take a short 15-second break. Looks like we have a guest. I'll let him come in and say hi.
Hey, Ben.
Hello. Hello.
Ben, hello. And Ben, happy birthday for tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Hi.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Heard we had another birthday recently, so happy birthday to you, Mr. Amerland.
Yeah. All the best people have birthdays in September. I'm told.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm sorry, everyone who doesn't have a birthday in September. Anyways, just wanted to stop in, say hi.
Salut Ben. Salut Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Hello. Just wanted
Hi,
to
Ben.
say hi. Thank you all for joining. Mr. Amerland, thank you very much for making me one of the dedications in your book.
David, call me David.
I mean, instincts, you know. Well, thank you very much. Have a good day. I'm
You
sure
too.
this
You
is
too.
gonna go
Take
great.
care. Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Mr.
very much.
Amerland, you do make your age, David.
That can, that
I know.
concludes
I
our-
know. It makes me feel old.
Sir Amerland.
Yeah, that's that. I think we'll take a little interjection here. All right, moving on, getting back to serious again. Now we're going to go to Tim. You have the floor.
Got so busy enjoying everyone else's here, I almost forgot that was still allowed. So one of the things that we were talking about earlier was we're talking about the change and the adapting and everything, and it can come in ways that we don't even think about. And it affects personal life as well as business life. And it's that fear of change. Fear of change can keep us progressing, prevent us from progressing in so many ways. And that's true with a creative too. And in our creativity, whether we're making programs or making art or writing books or wherever our talent may shine the most, sometimes we hit this point where we hit a fear wall. And that's what I liked about some of the points that Dave brought out in the book is that, because we prepare for these things, we know that we're going to need to make these changes. And we can learn to adapt, because if we don't push past the fear, we won't push past the change. We won't progress. We won't improve. And there was another point that I wanted to, it escapes me because I got it sooner. I was expecting Michelle next, honestly, because the way he's going down the line on my screen. But anyway, what was it? And it was if I think of it, I'll wave real big again, and hopefully you'll see me next time.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
But so I know David and I had a few discussions about the. In fact, he made an interesting comment in an email that it explains a lot about me, and at the time I wasn't entirely sure. But the more I read the book and the more I reread the book, I began to appreciate what he's saying because of what we experience and how we are trained and train ourselves, and being willing to make those training it to ourselves. It can affect us in our mental attitude, how we deal with the problems in business, how we deal with the problems in life, how our perspective around us is. And, and then he's using the science to tie it all together, to explain why it worked this way for us. And so even it doesn't matter if someone's not a business person or doesn't view themselves as a business person, the Sniper Mind is still a valuable read to them, simply because it will help them in everyday relationships and in understanding their everyday life to deal with the situations and problems come up that every one of us face just from living without running a business. Even in our regular workplace as a job, David was mentioning earlier about the teamwork and developing the team so that you're not doing it alone. So as the individual on that team, maybe you read it first to help you learn to adapt and adjust, and others see you make those adaptations. Man, I see you making so many of these great changes. Then now you can tell them this is how, because science proves it can be done. I learned it through David's book. And so it still becomes that ripple effect, whether it's a business focus or as an employee focus or just an individual that happens to spend most of their life at home or in other pursuits, non-business or career related.
Yeah.
And I know there's, like I said, I know there was another point. I was going over it last night and again this morning, and I got thrown off. If I think of it, if not, I'll just have to pester David with a hangout and cover it then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And thank you very much for saying all this. You're absolutely right. In writing this book, I've done a tremendous amount of research over 3 years, and it has continued to sort of, because there are a lot of leads which I followed, which I didn't put in the book because we were running out of space at 400 pages plus. But one interesting thing which comes up, and we live in a time right now where sadly, in the Western world are, part of our reality. And we have had studies on why do people react the way they do when the totally unexpected and absolutely lethal thing happens. And is that most of us fall in the 10-80-10 rule, where 10% of the people will keep their heads and do the right thing and escape. And they will survive that, even though they may be in a really tight situation. Freeze up. They will just not be able to believe that this is happening, and they'll do nothing. And their chances of surviving are on a sort of 60-40 scale. And will completely lose it, completely. They'll just blindly panic and go wherever. And this reflects in many ways the lack of thinking, the lack of preparation, the lack of discipline that we all have in our daily lives. This is the normal reality of what we actually live in. And the struggle in a complex world, in the 21st century, the complexities which we face to escalate. Let's say we completely solve the terrorism problem. It goes away. We live in a totally peaceful world. And we have the planet conspiring to kill us at every point because the weather patterns are changing. So the challenges we face, the crisis points which we will face, escalate going in the future. So essentially, and hopefully, what the book will do, what we as individuals who have read it and understood it can do, is move that needle a little bit from the 80% to the 10 that survive, which is the mentality, the attitude, the preparation, which is doable for everybody. From the 10% which completely lose it, perhaps we'll move them again towards the point where they don't lose it as much and they begin to think about it. I think any shift of the needle in that direction, in the positive side, is a big win for all of us.
Yes, so let's talk for a second here about the procedure, Japanese style meditation, as David points in his book. And it says when people get like overwhelmed or you just need to meditate to kind of get back to normal. The process is 3 steps basically. So write this down so you don't forget this. First thing, you sit down, number 1. Second step, you shut up, number 2. And number 3 is you count to 100. That's what the 3-step Japanese style meditation for warriors and businessmen involves. And it sounds funny, it sounds simple, but in reality, it really makes a huge difference. That a lot of times when you get in a state of panic, even taking just taking a breath and stopping for a second makes a huge difference. And if you panic, then nothing happens. I mean, if you drive a car and you panic, you got an accident. If you ski down the hill and you panic, you just hit a tree. Hello to Sunny Bono there somewhere. It's something that you need to work on. And so looking at everything that other people said, including especially what Gina said, in terms of taking time and learning something and putting effort into it to accomplish something. If you put all this together, you can see that when we were born, obviously we can't do squat. I mean, we wouldn't even be able to survive if somebody didn't take care of us. So you get into the whole network situation with other people because nothing happens. And if you look at, in times historically, you can see that, we had Steinway and Sons, and we had this and Sons. And, it was always, you have parents teach your kids how to do it so they can do something, so they can have a life. And so that goes back to what Tim was talking about, with multiple people being involved in the mix, because nothing gets done with just single individual. I mean, if you think about, for example, the stuff that Gina does with her art, did, not necessarily does right now, but what she did, she did it. Some of her best work is now hanging in somebody else's house. So obviously it was done. She did it initially herself, but it's now somebody else is enjoying the fruits of it. So you always have multiple people involved. And I think the key here is A, adapt to change, B, be willing to move forward to make some progress. I mean, those are the things I got from the book. C, do not panic under any circumstances. Just go with the flow, try to make things better if you can, going to what David just said about everything. And of course, when you think about what can I do to save the planet, there's nothing you can do to save the planet on your own. But if everybody takes the attitude there's nothing you can do, nothing ever will get done anywhere. With anything, doesn't matter how small it is, it just doesn't get done. So having positive attitude is certainly a key thing. And second thing is obviously doing it with other people, because two heads are always better than one, and all the sayings, all these sayings and stuff like that. With that, I want to move to the next part. I'm still going through my list in the book here, where David's talking about goals and why it's important to write goals down on paper.
Can I just interrupt and say, sorry, Oleg, I'm just conscious of Zara's time. Zara's got a meeting to go to, and
oh
she
yeah,
doesn't.
that's right. So another slap on the head for me, and Zara, you're up.
I'm sorry.
I've been so interested in this book since David started posting little quotes, and they were resonating, and I was like, whoa. And I think part of it is from training as crisis person. I was 4 years, 24/7 on, the phone could ring and it could be a crisis. And leading people on the other end of the phone, this was before mobile phones, leading people on the other end of the phone gently out of their panic toward taking steps to resolve the immediate situation, and then go forward into taking steps to resolve the situation long term. And I think at the end of the book, David talks about 3 steps: identify, assess, and manage. And I think those are so important. And I think we had a conversation long ago, David, when I went to the parking lot and I was thinking about something. I was way ahead in the future, thinking about something else. I opened the door and my giant Volvo door hit this little tiny car, in the parking lot. And of course the guy was inside his car, so I had to get out and talk to him. But after the fact, I thought, if I had been in the moment, that would never have happened. And I think one of the greatest gifts within the book is about focusing on being in the moment. But I also have something we haven't touched on in this discussion that prevails throughout the book, is how the mind and the body are connected, and that the bodily training that goes into becoming a sniper, or I think for any activity, or if it's developing your knife skills in the kitchen, or how to handle your brushes as an artist, or how to use dialogue in fiction, or whatever it is, that training, but the bodily skills. So I really wanted to hear back from both Errol and Michelle, about the importance of our body awareness and what we are identifying within our bodies in the present moment, still staying in the present moment, and how that helps us command the situation in the present moment. Because I think it's really important, that connection between the mind and the body, and how the body is addressing this moment right now. So here we are with Michelle and Errol right here before us.
Please, Michelle.
And David too, because
Yeah, that's true, Michelle.
I'm going to tell you something. Well, it's great to hear you, but last year I said to myself, okay, I'm going to connect myself with, high-level sport. And I said to myself, wait a minute, buddy, you're 48 years old. You can't be as 25, etc. And I grabbed a book on the web called 30-Day Change, Barry B. from David Amerland. I opened the first page and I shuttered the book again and put it on a shelf, that's all. And I said to myself, okay, you have to go higher. And I'm going to climb the Mont Blanc next year. And Saturday night, I said to David, hey, we only live once. You want to climb the mountain with me? He said, why not? And I said, okay, let's see. And some months later, he pulled out a book, and I just realized one thing. I was doing things without even being aware of it. And I want to say a big thank you to all of you, and David, you, because this is putting order in my life. I lost my dad 16 years ago. He was 50 years old. For me, I thought that we haven't life after 50 years. And I realized that a couple of months ago. That's really true. So I was living so fast and wanted to do a lot of things. And this is crucial because I was listening to you all. The only way to fight against infobesity is to work on compressible and uncompressible time. And I'm talking about visual techniques and methods and tools, because snipers, the first thing is to be visual. Muhammad Ali said once, the brain can't hit what it doesn't see, right? So I started again at a very high level. Well, my favorite sport, I started in 1984. And I must admit one thing. I couldn't continue in business the way I was doing it 1 year ago. I was really in a bad past, so I had to stop that. And then I've been interested a couple of weeks ago by Errol and Leader 193. It's just amazing. Those men are proving us what I've heard yesterday evening. I'm training with a former world champion karate, Gilles Hillet. He's going to meet soon David and Errol. I'm just going to give you, I hope, the last minutes great news. I've got great news for you. And he said yesterday evening, Gilles, we're going this year to separate two groups. Those who are not in shape are not going to fight. And that guy is training champions and business owners and whatever, well, a lot of people. If you are not in shape, if you don't have your physical condition, how can you fight? So the first thing is that you must learn technicals, modern techniques, and tools. But, I know these tools since 20 years. And as David says, there's no shortcuts. The bad news is that you have to learn, well, modern ways to go better and better. If you take the book and you go to a business owner, what can you say about the sniper mind? You can tell him, hey, that's what I do. Now, this book brings you to level up the vision, your business vision and your business strategy, because people, they mix too fast strategy and tactics. What is a strategy? A strategy is, okay, what game are we playing? On what is the field? And how am I going to win? And there is where tactics come in. So you must learn tactics, and you can't mix everything like that. Another great thing for everybody is that we all have three curves of life: a personal curve, a professional curve, and a social curve. Why is it important to separate these curves? If you put everything together, and when something's wrong and you're down, well, you're completely down. But if you separate these three curves and you say to yourself, okay, let's focus on these 3 curves. Even if you have 2 curves down, 1 curve can keep you up. This is very important. So to make it short, this is the great, here's the great news. It was crazy. This book, this summer, just, you know, wrapped me up, and I said to myself, okay, there's something going on. As you might know, some of you, I am also leading a big exhibition event on the 24th of October, right? In the northeastern France. It is called Sirène Grand Est. Sirène Grand Est. Grand Est is the big region. Now Alsace is joined with Champagne, so now we make big regions in France, right? And people told me, okay, you must help us to create an exhibition and an event around digital. And I said, digital, okay, great. 80% of people are really wrong about this topic. And then I said to myself, wait a minute. If we talk about human beings and human value, that's what you were saying before, David, and you others too, when you express things about yourself and what you feel, etc. And then I said to myself, okay, what should change the game? And what if we talk about something very new, but not really new? Talk about people. And then we thought about a new event in the exhibition, in the event. And this has led with the second co-president called Isabelle Husser. I know she's watching us. Isabelle is the co-president, but also leading French industries by a federation. And I said, well, we're talking about soft skills, right? Okay. What if you go to a person who is not a business owner, and we all know that the tsunami of digital is going to destroy employees, jobs. And what we know now is that the soft skills are not understood in France. So we brainstormed around that, and soft skills literally means in France human skills or behavioral skills. But behavioral skills is not new. We talk about this since 3 decades. So this has led to something crazy. The new somebodies. Why? The new somebodies, we all know that nobodies are the new somebodies. Digital is a weapon, right? But behind that weapon, we have human beings. So the baseline of the new somebodies is human and technical skills which reveal us in the digital era. So we created a microsite called the new somebodies.xyz. You can go on this website. You will see on the introduction a picture in the header with Errol Dobler. And please, David, can you tell us more about the building behind Errol? Because, you know, I was surprised with Errol. And this is a surprise for you, Errol. When I was in your Lead 193 overview, a great video, I saw that building and I said to myself, Jesus, just the day before, I asked Errol if he could make something on the 24th of October. Can you go to New York? Yes, I am really a New Yorker, you know, Michelle. I said, great. And the video the next day, I saw both your videos and about your TED Talk. Really, we are going to talk about this offline, I think. And just one thing, David, tell us about the, I'm going to show to people this quickly, this, I'm going to share this screen. So David, can you tell us what's behind Errol?
Yeah, a Diron dice.
And what's in that building?
I don't know. What is in the building?
In the building behind Errol.
Yes.
Saint Martin's Press.
Oh, of course.
And the book is, don't forget, I'm a former sniper.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Learning the dots, right?
Am I wrong or not?
No. You're right.
So the book is the editor of the Sniper Mind is just in the building behind Errol.
Oh.
Yeah. It's on Google Maps, so you can check it out. So that event is going to bring together people who are bringing value. So what I was saying just before is that we have here at the baseline, we're talking about human and technological skills which reveal us in the digital era, les nouveaux somebodies. And the co-president told me yesterday on the phone, wow, now it's clear for me. Now we can talk about it. And we are going to talk about leadership and tech with Errol. We're going to talk about cognition, operational cognition. We're going to talk about the perception of risk with Gilles Hillet. This is my sensei now, again. And we are going to talk about our national agency, security agency, the equivalent of the NSA, about threats, technical and organizational threats. So if you want, this is the result of all the work I've done this summer.
Awesome.
That's really good.
Okay, and it's very clear, obviously, they're doing this on my birthday, so it'll make a really special event because of that. Moving on here, let's go back to, let's see what my next step is. By the way, before we go, Michelle, is this going to be broadcast anywhere?
Yes, thank you for the question, Oleg. Yes, of course. Sure. What we're going to do is to bring Errol and David by an embedded YouTube live with translators. Well, an amphitheater with maximum 300 persons in a campus in the heart of Strasbourg, okay? And we're going to have two translators. One translator is going to translate. He's from an English family. I'm casting young people for that. And that person is going to translate David and Errol. And the public is going to have headsets. Of course, we are in the, the European Council. We know how to translate things. And when people want to speak with Errol and David, well, David and Errol are also going to have a translator, personal translator, to give them the content coming out from animator. There's an animator from Paris, a great guy, but he's a bit like a Spitfire. So I'm really customizing the thing as we can be completely cool and really in 45 minutes, not 30, but 45 minutes, 3/4 of an hour.
That's it? She just disappeared, froze in 45 minutes. What?
But the problem, it's at 4 o'clock in the morning for New York. So
no. So is it going to be recorded or not?
Yes, of course. It's a YouTube live. Sorry, YouTube live.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Excellent. And there's going to be a Russian translation, right?
Of course.
All right, moving on. So looking forward to seeing the events. It sounds pretty interesting.
If you want to make the cameraman on YouTube, it's not a problem there.
No. Just in case Putin wants to pick it out and all that. So speaking of Russians, let's move on here. So in the book, David is talking about some great snipers, and he makes a point about the fact there's this guy called Zaitsev, which is a Russian guy who used to be a World War II famous sniper during World War II. There's a Finn guy called the White Death, right, David? And then also somebody in Vietnam, or maybe he was in Vietnam. Anyway, bottom line is the book states that there's different people, different snipers from different countries, but because of training and because of what they do, the results basically are very similar. So it doesn't really matter what language you speak, doesn't matter where you were born, doesn't matter if you were born, but as long as you were born, you're able to be trained to basically do
important
do that.
distinction.
Exactly. But what I wanted to say is why, going back to the question I asked before, was what's the importance? Maybe Gina can participate in this too. Why is it important to write goals on paper?
Well, okay, that's a great question. And essentially, it's important to our goals and our targets because it allows us to see how we can prioritize and also establish a progression. I'll give you a classic example. I was reading an article about Richard Branson just a couple of weeks ago. He sort of started from a company that was a glorified magazine, which then became a music company, a music label company, and now Virgin is a global brand.
Yeah.
And he said something really important, that essentially his life is ruled by lists. He constantly makes lists, and he puts things on those lists, and he crosses them out, and that's how he gets things done. And that's a huge oversimplification on his part. I get that. But it's also a practicality. How are you going to get anything done if it's not right in front of you?
No,
because
but
that
that's
allows you
not
to
my
begin
question.
to
I understand that. My question is not that. My question is, why is it more important or better in terms of functionality to do it on paper versus, for example, a list in Google Keep? That's what I'm asking. Speaking of digital,
well,
Michelle was talking about. No, seriously,
Yeah.
seriously.
I see. Well, I suppose
Doesn't matter.
bear in mind that I keep things on Keep, but yes, okay. For some people, it's a tactile thing. It's how you actually engage with things. Having a tactility, engaging yourself in the practicality of a task is in itself satisfying in many ways. Because although we live in a modern world, we carry ancient bodies and ancient brains, and that's exactly the problem. We have all these sort of heuristics which run us inside our heads, which were beautifully optimized to help us survive the Stone Age and perhaps even the Bronze Age. But the moment we got beyond that and complexity started appearing in our lives, they can be short-circuit work against us. So it's keeping things as simple as possible. So if you start small, create a list, write it down,
Okay,
get a sense of what
so you're still not really answering my question. Maybe Gina can answer. Gina, would you mind participating? And I'm not trying to be flippant. I really would like to know, because I'm big time into digital part of it. And I just it's so important because in the book it talks about doing it on paper, and I know you're a huge fan of that approach. Why is it important to write your goals on paper versus, for example, having goals on the computer?
Yeah, this is for anybody who doesn't know this. This is a conversation we've been having for a long time and disagreeing on. Like for me, writing on paper, it's a connection of mind-body. So the information is then being incorporated into my body, not just into my thinking. And typing has some element of that, but David touched on it when he mentioned things really tactile. And I think that the physicality and the actual being able to hold something, have it as an object, to me makes it go in deeper. I learn more deeply often when I use my hands and I have a sense of touch. And it's physical.
So with that, you would prefer regular books versus like ebooks, right?
I've been reading ebooks a little bit more lately, but yeah, I mean, I have to do all this, and I've got all kinds of notes in here too, and it's just, for me, it's this. I've been taking this to the beach. I've been reading this like kind of everywhere, in different environments, which has also been a really great part of it. And I don't know if it were on my Kindle. I really like the physical book.
Gotcha. Well, some of us didn't get physical books. We only got ebooks. There's a little gap there.
We can rectify that though, don't worry.
Right, Nina? Thank you, Gina. Thank you.
I think it's also the focus, because when you are writing, it's so connected that you forget everything around. At least when I write and no one understands what I'm written, only me. That's maybe the secret too, because on Keep it's typed and everybody can read it when I send it, but when I give my list, no one knows what's written here.
No, but besides that, you said we're products of the old school, and I grew up in the same kind of environment like you did, so the whole paper thing was also definitely very much part of my life. But at the same time, and I know you're a very digital person too. You have a lot of things that are going on. 1 second, Tim. You got a lot of things that are going on with you online, so you're not just this paper-only person. But I was just really wanted to ask people like Gina and yourself, because to me, I'm much more into efficiency of things, and that's why I use the digital approach. But I know it's really important. Like Gina, like she said, we have had, arguments on this before, and nobody convinced me yet. But at the same time, you have some people that prefer one way or the other way. And I know, like I said, since you're coming from the same kind of environment of learning that I have, you said you prefer the paper approach yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think we are using all the body for thinking, because also the heart has also emotions, and everything is connected. So we don't think just with our minds, but with the body. And when I write, I really focus and forget everything around. Versus writing on a computer, I do a lot, but it's different. Sometimes I just need to summarize the goals and to keep going. Otherwise, I get lost with Keep and with all the files. It starts to be like a bit spacey.
So like
for
David said, it's baggage from the Bronze Age, sounds like. Okay. Tim, you're up.
Yeah, I was going to address that because I do written and I do digital. I have my to-do lists, so I can take them with me, and I make use of them. And I jot down notes and to-do lists. You can't see them very good because of my lighting, but anyway, see, there they are. And then I cross them off. So, does it lock it in my mind any better if I put it on paper than on computer? For me, no. But then I'm a techophile too. All right. Early on, I learned, but I do know scientifically it has been proven that there is a mental, physical connection of actually physically writing things down that affects us greater than typing it or speaking it to our computers.
Okay.
It's a genetic hardwiring that's there, and that's what David was trying to point out, is that it's a reality. It's something we do have to accept that we deal with.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so David is threatening to leave if I don't, wrap this up. So I think I better do I want to finish by, first of all, thanking everybody for participating today. It was great to hear from everybody, great to see everybody here. I especially obviously want to thank David for writing this exceptional book. And, I'm sure it's going to be a huge, huge bestseller when it comes out in November. Sorry about the noise here. Somebody's wind is happening again. There we go. Thank you. And so thank you, David, for the book, and thank you for being here, participating with us. I did have a couple more points, but it doesn't look like David has the time, so we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you, Errol. Thank you, Gideon, who's now here, and Zara, and Gina, and Michelle, and Nina, and Tim. And thank you again, David.
Thank you very much, guys. That was awesome. Really, really good.
All right.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you all later. Take care.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.